What do you think was the real exploding, what was the moment that separated you from where you were to where you are?
Probably playing on Oprah, and then, she cried after I got through. Whether it was show business or not, I don't know, but I'm sure grateful she did. And that...
Because it was that bad?
Yeah, totally.
Greetings, kids. Welcome to the newest episode of Stories to Tell. I am actually down in Miami, enjoying a little time off down here. If you told me up till about 10 years ago, I would not have had having a home in Miami on my bingo card, but thanks to Daisy Fuentes and her family, we do. I love spending time here, and you can't, I'm telling you guys, you can't beat Miami in the beginning of spring like this. It's just gorgeous. So getting a little R&R down here. My guest today I'm very excited about is the incredibly gifted Chris Botti. I met Chris about 20-something years ago through our mutual friend Bobby Coli, and instantly became a fan. Chris is probably, he's, I think, the most highly regarded trumpet player or instrumentalist, really, and one of them in the world, certainly in our, of the American horn players. Chris Botti rates at the top. He is just so stunningly good. And he's toured with Paul Simon and Sting, and he's put out these beautiful solo records, which you should check out if you haven't. And Chris doesn't do a lot of press or interviews, so I was thrilled that he wanted to come and sit with me for an episode of our show. And we reminisced and we told stories, and I learned a lot about Chris that I didn't even know in all the years I've known him. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now so you never miss an episode. And right now, here's me and my guest, Chris Botti. My guest today, Chris Botti, my pal. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. How are you?
So happy to see
so
you.
So good to be here.
This was really just an excuse for us to go hang, because we're going to dinner after this. And we've been friends for 20 years?
23 years, something like. I think I met you 21 years, something like that ago.
How long between meeting you? Because I actually don't know that I remember us meeting. I remember you coming to my house when I lived in Chicago.
That's when I
we
first
recorded together. Is that when we met?
I think so.
Holy shit!
I think
wow.
Bobby Coli brought me to Chicago.
Yeah, and
we recorded on a vocal. Me and Bobby talked me into singing. Which,
yeah.
In hindsight, it's one of his greatest charms of him. Like his exuberance of and getting coercing in a great way.
Coercing,
yeah.
Yes.
So Bobby thought that I should sing, and we came and recorded at your place, and you were gracious enough to kind of produce the vocals and get me to kind of be in some sort of a ballpark for a jazz trumpet player.
I remember when you came to my house in Chicago and you were apologizing, like, dude, I'm not a singer. It's okay, because at that point I was producing and writing primarily. I really wasn't making albums, I think, at that point. I was mostly just writing and producing for other people. And so I learned I learned some good vocal production technique to make even people who were terrible sound good.
Yeah.
So I wasn't worried about it. And you ended up, like, your tone and the way you phrased, and it was easy. But the story that I remember that I've told so many people, and it makes me laugh even thinking about it. I made you leave. I said, go play chess with my kids or go hang out because I don't want you to be here for this process.
That, yeah.
And when it's ready, when I've put your vocal together and I've fine-tuned it and I've tweaked it, and I'll let you hear it and see what you think. So you came back in, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours later. The engineer and I had finished, and I thought it sounded great. And you sat here in the middle of the speakers, between the speakers, and you listened like this, and you were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe how good I sound!" Like, but you knew some of the stuff that had to go on to get it there, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember, I think it was we had dinner after that night, and you said, "This whole experience is like, I imagine like Spielberg doing Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he's directing Harrison Ford, and there's just a green screen, and Harrison Ford is like saying, 'What's my motivation?' And Spielberg's like, 'Okay, so there's this boulder, and you got to pretend that this boulder is like rifling at you and like it's going to run you over,
Yeah.
and you got to really sell it.'" And you said, "That's how I feel that this vocal turned out." Like, and from that point on, every once in a while, we run into each other, even if it was just like in passing, and you would look at me and you go,
That's hilarious. Yeah, that was my one shot at singing, you know, and then
"But you should have done more, man," you should have had me produce more. But
yeah. Well, soon maybe
Yeah.
we'll try
But
that again.
you know what? You always sort of were very self-deprecating about that vocal, and I think it's really nice.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
All right, so this is exciting for me to sit with you and have an excuse to hang, but there's a lot I know about you just because we've known each other for a long time. But I'm so excited to try to get some stories that maybe you've never told me about your path along the way.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have in common is that we were really the kids when we came into when our careers began. We were both around, you're like 6 months older than me, something like that.
Yeah.
So you started, I mean, would you call yourself a prodigy when you were a kid?
No. But my maturation physically on the trumpet happened later. So real prodigy, it's hard. You know, Wynton Marsalis, I guess, is a prodigy.
Is it semantics? Is it, like,
I
what's the
mean,
definition?
there's a certain amount of technique. You know, like if you look at the young prodigies on classical piano or violin, they can go for it. But I was, you know, if you're singing opera, if you're playing trumpet or something like that these muscles and all that, and your airstream and stuff like that develops later. And there's some brilliant like Bill Evans quotes, the pianist Bill Evans, where he was like, Miles Davis really didn't come into his own until his 40s, because that's where he had stature physically on the instrument and could, you know, play delicately and play with all kinds of feeling and technique and grace.
Do you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. Because
Really?
when you look at Miles Davis, the way he played with Charlie Parker,
Yeah.
he didn't have that. He certainly was no prodigy, and he didn't have that chops and the technique. You know, there have been some real prodigy young trumpet players, Wynton being one, Clifford Brown being one, who was, you know, at the height of mastery and then passed at 24 years old. So he did so much. I left college and went to New York after a brief stint playing with Sinatra, and went to New York and did studio work. I didn't really release my first solo album until I was in my mid-30s, and I didn't really have success. And what I define by success is, do you have the ability to sell a concert ticket?
Right.
Because you can, yeah, you know.
Well,
you
the
can-
only way to do that is to have built a following of some kind.
Correct.
Obviously.
And I didn't have that kind of concrete thing where, say, I can play not just the Monterey Jazz Festival or the Montreal Jazz Festival, but can you play in Milwaukee,
Right.
or Miami? You know, like that's a big, for jazz artists, it's a really, really difficult thing, because you might get one concert hall in New York, and you might get one concert hall at the Playboy Jazz Festival for one night. But can you go out there and make a living and take a band out there and play in all these different locations?
By the way, I have to interject something.
Yeah.
My wife's family lives in Miami. We've talked about this. Her sister Rosanna and her husband Bernie, having no idea that you and I had any connection, told me a few years ago about seeing you at the Night Center in Miami. It's the Night Center, right?
Yeah.
And they were raving about this show that they went to of yours without having any idea that I
that's
knew
nice.
you.
Oh, that's very
I was
nice.
like, I know Chris. So yeah.
Yeah, we're playing Fort Lauderdale on Sunday.
Oh yeah.
A couple days from now, and so we play there.
Wait. You're getting way ahead of yourself here. First of all, the fact that you just like threw Sinatra out there, like, yeah, when I did a little thing with Sinatra. Take me from, so both your parents were musical, right?
My mother mainly was a classical pianist. My father, not so much music, but they. I think it's the most difficult thing for a parent, because most parents think their kid's going to be Paul McCartney or whatever when they pick up an instrument. But then to actually allow the kid, when they come out of the practice room, and go, I really want to be a professional musician.
Yeah.
And for them to not go, wait, we were kidding, we want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. That's a real gut punch.
Yeah.
For a gut check, I should say, for a parent.
Yeah.
And so I was headstrong about it from the age of 12 until I left for college at 17.
Did you start on piano?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I turned on the TV one day in third grade and saw Doc Severinsen in The Tonight Show.
Really? That was it?
Yeah.
It was Doc?
Yeah. And I said,
shit.
I want to do that. And so my parents went out and got me a horn, and I started to play. And then a few years after that, maybe sixth grade or something like that,
Was the first song you learned The Tonight Show theme by Paul Anka?
No, the first song I learned was the theme song to a great, fantastic movie called Brian's Song. Do you remember? Yes.
Who played the trumpet on that?
I don't know who actually played the trumpet, but
Lalo Schifrin, right?
Henry Mancini. Henry Mancini wrote that.
No, he didn't.
He didn't?
No.
You
Lalo
know.
Schifrin.
You probably know. Yeah. Okay.
Lalo Schifrin.
Yeah.
I'm such a nerd.
It was such a great film. It was.
Oh, the film, I remember it was a TV movie of the week. James Caan, Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
And it's the story of Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo, who were Chicago Bear football players. And Brian Piccolo, it's a true story, died very young of lung cancer.
Yes. And the most heartbreaking movie, and Billy D. Williams gives that
great
speech. As
I was
God
a little
is watching
kid and I
us
was
tonight,
crying.
let him,
like, why didn't know what was happening
show
to
his
me?
love to Brian Piccolo.
Yeah.
Oh God, it was just like, and I was into that sad music even in third grade.
Oh my God, this is so. This I'm loving hearing this.
Yeah. I was into that melancholy.
It was, but that was, I think, that's so interesting. I think that film was the first time I realized how music makes the difference in what you're watching. So you can watch a movie that maybe has a sad scene, but if it's not scored right,
correct,
you don't feel the stuff.
That's why Cinema Paradiso is so great.
Yes.
And Ennio Morricone does, it's just the right.
Or Dave Grusin's on Golden Pond.
Yes.
Or John Barry's Out of Africa.
Yes.
Or on and on. We could go on and on. Yeah. But Brian's song, it's Michel Legrand.
We'll have to Google it.
I'll Google it. Watch this. If only there were a mechanism where you could look up something and get an answer. It's Michel Legrand. It's not Lalo Schifrin. Brian's song, this is going to be scintillating for the viewers. Even the result, they're going to be like, I don't care. Was written by, wait, now I got to type music. Theme by, you son of a bitch.
Is it Henry Mancini, right?
It says Henry Mancini.
Yeah. Because he also
I can't be wrong about this.
He also wrote Two for the Road, which I love as well. Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
I don't know what to say. I feel so betrayed by myself.
It's on camera.
Oh, now I get it.
It was orchestrated or something?
Music by Michel Legrand.
And so what did Henry Mancini do?
I think he adapted it.
I see. Okay, got it.
He adapted it.
In the way that they did the Charlie
the
Charlie Chaplin smile and all that. It was done and adapted.
Yes.
I got it. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Henry Mancini, we could talk about this all day long, but Henry Mancini scored this movie called Experiment in Terror. Did you ever hear that?
No.
Theme?
No.
We'll talk later, but if you're of an age where you know those kind of composers and you know Henry Mancini for Pink Panther and all those lovely themes he did, he scored this suspense film called Experiment in Terror, directed by Blake Edwards. And it's the creepiest music you've ever heard, and it was used for a TV show later when I was growing up called Creature Features. Remember Creature
Yeah.
Features?
Yeah.
And it was like doom, 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 doom. And it's like this cool piano. Oh, God, Henry Mancini was such a cat.
Yeah.
Such a cat. Okay, I'm digressing.
Yeah, no?
So you see Doc Severinsen, you're like, that's what I want to do. You hear Brian's song. That's like you're solidified in that's what I'm going to do with my life from that.
Yeah, and Doc ended up playing a kind of a really interesting role in my life, or my kind of weird success or something.
Personally?
But yeah, like, I met Doc a couple of times, over the years when I was a kid growing up. I'd go to the Oregon Symphony and I'd get a chance to meet him or just shake. He's very charismatic. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in college, I got called. There was a doctor in Indianapolis that called Indiana University School of Music and said, we want to hire a jazz quartet to come play at some party. That's all I was a gig. And I had a quartet. They called me. I went in, played this gig. And Doc Severinsen was there because he was going to play with the Indianapolis Symphony that next day. And it was a fundraising event.
Okay.
And he came up and he was very, very nice. And I was a 22-year-old, kid. Nobody knew who the heck I was at all. And he came up to me and said, you sound fantastic or whatever. And I was just blown away that he was there, and he was very nice. And a couple of months later, he did an article in Downbeat magazine. And they asked him, who's his favorite trumpet player? And he goes, well, I could give you all the usual guys, but my eyes on this kid that no one's heard of called Chris Botti in Indiana. Like, he said that.
You know why?
It was just like...
Well, you know why, right?
Why?
This is such an incredible theme that happens with certain people. You manifested that. You made that happen because your love for him when you were a kid, and the fact that when you just said to me, because I didn't know that, I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
And I would have thought Chet Baker or Miles or whatever. You're like, I saw Doc Severinsen. I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then a matter of 8-10 years later, there's Doc doing an interview saying, this kid Chris Botti. That is truly manifestation at its best.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way, but that's so
Oh,
cool.
no, it's 100%.
But
made that happen. You pulled him into your path.
Goes two sets of 20 years apart later. So 20 years apart after he did that first thing.
Yeah.
I'm getting off the airport in LAX, and I run into Doc at the Hudson News, And I go, holy crap, Doc, how are you? And he goes,
And now you've not seen him since
no.
then? Okay.
No. And
now you're you.
Yeah. And just starting to come up, it's starting to really go on.
Yeah, but he's clearly...
And he's watching. He goes, Chris, dude, he goes, I'm really proud of you, what you've accomplished and stuff like that. He goes, do me a favor, son, always wear a suit. And I was like, shit, okay, Doc, I'm always going to wear a suit. So it didn't matter if we were playing outdoors in Santa Cruz in August. If it was blazing hot, I wore a suit.
Good for you.
Because Doc said that, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward another 20 years. Now it's 2000, well, maybe it's 17 years. It's 2019, right before COVID. And it was August before then.
Right.
And they're making a documentary on Doc. And they said, what would you like to do? And he goes, I really want to play a duet with Chris Botti.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I show up at the taping. Of
Surprised
this thing.
him?
No,
he
we were going to play.
So somebody reached out.
Yeah. We were going to play a song together.
Of course, you're in Doc Severinsen's fucking...
And so I show up at the taping. It's August in New York.
Yeah.
I show up at the taping in the afternoon, and I'm wearing a suit. And they, it's kind of like inside the actor's studio or whatever. And
Doc's like, why are you wearing a suit?
Well, they said, can you tell us some funny stories? And I kind of sped it up, and I said, and Doc Severinsen said, always wear a suit. And so it didn't matter if we were playing Santa Cruz in August, I would wear a suit. And Doc looked at me and said, I never said that. And I'm like, I said, that's not true, Doc.
Was he fucking with you? Or
No,
he
was wearing a flashy jacket and a t-shirt or whatever. And I was just like, okay, well, it was a cute thing.
Wow.
He's just, he's still going, and he's still such an incredible force at how to, be an elegant musician and to gracefully honor not only the art form that he's chosen, the trumpet, but also honor that the people that he went around, he never piggybacked on Johnny Carson's name,
Right.
and sort of pimped out his, he didn't go on and abuse that stature.
Right.
He was always very respectful to the legacy of Johnny Carson and what a great role that he played in American pop culture. Because that band every night, it didn't matter if it was Don Rickles walking out to like screw around with Johnny, or it was Sinatra or Johnny Mathis or whatever. It was so different than the way things are now. There weren't in-ear monitors and live or canned stuff. It was just real, the who's who, the creme de la creme of musicians in LA at that time, and headed so greatly by him.
I have a photo I cherish of me and my father. So maybe like 5 or 6 years before he died. He came with me and conducted the strings. I performed on The Tonight Show many, many times, but I did it once with strings with an orchestra. And my dad had done the chart on the record, so he came and conducted the strings. And he and Doc went back, because my dad was a jazz pianist. And I have this great picture of standing in the middle between my dad and Doc. It's
Amazing.
Was that, even though Doc doesn't remember, was that the thing that you think maybe inspired? Because you're known for your style as much as you are for your, maybe not as much as for your music, but you're known as this very stylish dude. And the way you dress, the way the photographs that you put out there, was that inspired by that, by Doc saying,
well, I'm certainly,
way?
The initial hit was the glamour that Doc, Doc's.
You said elegance, because that's the word. Yeah,
but seeing him walk out in the first thing, up comes the Tonight Show thing, and he's playing, and he wore super out there, flashy stuff, but the way that he was always super elegant in his demeanor and stuff like that. And then I don't know how, style, I guess, I don't know, over the years, I've always been attracted to different musicians that have that. Miles certainly did. A lot of great jazz musicians had a certain style. And then when I joined Sting's band, he was pretty on me
we're going to get to that.
To be cool on stage in that dress.
So you've done what we do. You collect little things from people that you admire, or you see, I'm going to do a little version of that, or so how old are you when you get, because Sinatra and Buddy Rich, right?
Yes.
In the same span, in the same time period?
So it was.
How old are you at this point?
20, just turned 22.
Jesus. Oh my God, Chris. How do you take me through how you go from not playing with Sinatra and Buddy Rich to playing with Sinatra and Buddy Rich?
So those great big bands of the day, for many years, they would cherry pick, kind of like football players would get cherry picked from college, the horn sections to the Woody Herman band, the Stan Kenton band, Buddy Rich band, Sinatra's backing stuff, all that stuff. They would cherry pick through a couple of key colleges: North Texas State, Miami, Indiana University, where I went to college. Not so much Juilliard or Eastman. They'd use these other with the great brass teachers. And my trumpet teacher, Bill Adam, who taught Randy Brecker, Jerry Hay, Larry Hall, Charlie Davis, all these great people. He's a legend of trumpet playing. And so Buddy Rich would use a ton of trumpet players. So the call was for me to join Buddy Rich's band, but it was bumped up to the first 2 weeks were Frank Sinatra with Buddy Rich's band opening, and then Frank Sinatra using the horn section to sit in the Nelson Riddle Orchestra for a 2-week gig at the Universal Amphitheater for the opening of his album, L.A. is My Lady. Remember that? Yeah. So that was a big deal for him. And my mom was such a Frank Sinatra freak. And for me to go to her and ask her, can I drop out of college and blow off a degree?
Yeah.
I knew she loved Sinatra so much she might let me out. And she did. She probably wouldn't have let me out for Buddy Rich, but.
Right.
So I did this great, fantastic, thing, and I learned so much by watching Sinatra, even in that 2-week gig.
Are you playing solos in this gig?
I played a couple of solos. And he showed up at the first sound check, and he said, "Nice solo, kid," because I played in Fly Me to the Moon.
Sinatra?
Yeah, he didn't ever come to sound check, but this gig was a big one for him.
Holy shit.
And And it was great because he did something that I haven't seen that often or hardly anything in modern day thing. But, you know, he walks out and he has all his worldwide iconic charisma. So he can project his music to the whole Universal Amphitheater.
Yeah.
Then he would do this old school thing where he would like talk to individual people in the audience.
Yeah.
The way kind of Rickles or D. Martin or, you know, this from being in that old school kind of like Rat Pack and all that.
Yep.
And then he would always turn around and acknowledge the band, the soloist. This is a Don Costa arrangement.
I was going to say,
yeah,
he would always introduce
Nelson
a
Riddle,
song with a Nelson Riddle arrangement, with a
yeah.
Don Costa arrangement.
Yeah.
Those days are
and he
long
turns around
ago.
and you know, they weren't in ear monitors and all that stuff, and so it was just this old school way. And you know, the way he used his microphone cord as almost like another instrument. You know,
Was
like
he
the way,
smoking during the set?
I don't remember if One for My Baby. I remember playing One for My Baby, but I don't know if he lit up during that. I can't.
Were you able at that age to grasp what was happening to you? Like what? Like, did you have a what the fuck moment?
Yeah. I mean, you know, that first 2 weeks, I had a what the fuck with the just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I joined Buddy's band, and it was what the fuck for maybe a lower.
Right.
Yeah, like he's a tough band leader, like really tough.
We've all heard the tape.
And I was on the band. I was
During that?
I was right in
it happened on the bus, right?
seat. You know, when he
No,
was
you were
"Trumpet
part of
players,
that?
you won't even know you were on this band. Try me, motherfuckers. You'll be back at the red light in New York. You won't even know you were on this
so
band."
this
That's
is-
a famous.
this is
that's
a famous-
I'm not just using my
No.
own language. That's a very.
This
famous.
is a famous recording.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these famous recordings that come out of whether it's Bill O'Reilly freaking out before we'll do it, fuck it, we'll do it live, or there's a Paul Anka tape that's really
Yep.
amazing where he's dressing down his people, and there are these tapes that got leaked.
Yeah.
And there's a famous. It's called the Buddy Rich tape.
Well, there's like 7 of them.
Yeah, but
And
this one on the bus.
Yeah, yep. Well, there's
You
7
were
bus
there,
tapes.
and you
There's
were
the
a
one where he
kid.
kicks Dave Panicky off,
Yeah.
the trombone player,
Holy
kicks him off the bus.
shit.
But I was, for that particular one where he's try me, trumpet players winning with breadline, blah, blah, blah. So, and it was when the Walkman, you know, the Sony Walkman with the black microphones that come out of the top, just became in vogue. So all the guys had one, and you could feel Buddy getting testy and riled up about something, you know, his fight with his girlfriend or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then he would just ignite and bring us all onto the bus. And then the different guys in the band would just hit the record button. And then
so great.
he would just go bananas.
Yeah.
I mean, and I realized, you know, like, I was an idealistic kind of jazzer at the time, and he wanted someone to play like Bix Beiderbecke, like real in the in the pocket with him, and his musicianship was incredible.
Yeah.
But I wanted to play more avant-garde or weirder or whatever, and we never really kind of hit it off, and so I only lasted in that band about 3 months, and then I went right to New York and started.
When you one question about the Sinatra gig before we leave it, because you mentioned your mom loved Sinatra, and obviously you understood the importance of an artist like that, a legendary person like him. But I was going to ask you, were you kind of like, this is just a gig for me because you were such a jazzer that you would be like, you would look
I
down
loved Sinatra because when my mom would drive me up to my trumpet lessons, which were like 80 miles away.
Yeah.
We'd always listen to like Sinatra.
Isn't that interesting? Because my dad, who was phenomenal jazz pianist, and he would talk about it a lot. He would say, I was the biggest snob on earth. Like I was a fucking classically trained jazz musician.
Yeah.
But he loved Sinatra.
Yeah. And I loved the sonics of the way those records sound.
Yeah.
Just like the space, if you listen to like Only the Lonely or Guess I'll Hang My Tears Out to Dry or In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning.
Yeah.
And those the arrangements come in and the space and the relaxed way that, you know, of the Joe Beam, of course, Sinatra record.
Yeah.
Those records are just, they're audio pleasing as much as they are musician pleasing and stuff like that. And it's just, it's magic. You know, those records that he made, especially the Reprise later stuff, is just great.
So what happened after the Buddy Rich gig?
Well, when I was going to college, there was a template for a young person to admire the generation or two that came before them and see a path in. And that would have been highlighted by the Brecker brothers, both Randy and Michael Brecker,
Yep.
David Sanborn, Steve Gadd, Out West, Jerry Hay, Charlie Davis, Larry Hall, Chuck Finley. And I could see a path that I could like use my jazz skills and somehow get into the studio business.
How old? So when you're with Sinatra and Buddy Rich, you're 22. You said.
22. And I moved right, it's still 22.
But are you thinking at 22 or even prior that you want to be an artist, that you want to make your own records? Like at what age do you go from, I want to just be a musician, I want to play in orchestras, I want to be the guy, I want to make records.
I
wanna do my own thing.
always wanted to do that. However, maybe one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, when I first moved to New York, I was 22, and he'd already been in New York for a year and a half or 2 years, and that's Wynton Marsalis. And his rise to his stardom was so incredible. And I made the decision, I was like, okay, hold on a second. If I go out and try to make a straight ahead jazz record now, Wynton owns that glass ceiling. I'm never going to be able to go above that. It's going to be this, and he, in his iconic status, is going to hold that position. So I also loved a bunch of pop music at the time. I loved Peter Gabriel and the Blue Nile and Annie Lennox and
Sting.
and Sting, of course. But this was like 1984. And
I think you turned me on to the Blue Nile.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure when you were at my house 20 years ago,
yeah, I love them.
you turned me on to.
For those of you that don't know who that band is,
Yeah.
they're a very obscure Scottish band,
Yeah.
and the singer Paul Buchanan is
Bobby
just
Coli.
magic. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And every like cool musician I've ever met, they love that.
Yeah.
They love him and that band.
Yeah, yeah. He
So I'm
was-
sorry, go ahead.
He was magical. So I knew that I kind of wanted to mix this up, and then after only being in New York for maybe 4 or 5 years of doing a lot of studio work, and Paul Simon would find his musicians from the studio world. So he got a hold of me and said, do you want to come, through his people, you want to come audition or play in my band?
What
And
had he heard of you that made him reach out to you specifically?
the original saxophonist in the band was going to be Lenny Pickett.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
Lenny didn't want to do it because he had his obligations with Saturday Night Live.
Right.
So Paul Simon said, who could you recommend to play on trumpet? And it's going to be Michael Brecker on saxophone. So I walk in and it's the first day of rehearsal. It's Michael, and it's Michael. It's me and Michael, and then Steve Gadd, and then Richard T. And then it was bonkers.
Okay.
The band was incredible.
Freeze frame that moment. Try to put yourself back in that moment. What's the balance between nervousness and fear and confidence that you, like, we're gonna fucking kill it? Be really honest.
Mostly nervousness, and then complete, not kill it, but like complete in awe of how gracious Michael Brecker and how supportive he was. I mean, he was the star of that section, and he was so humble and so incredible, and he really let me kind of be the person to write out the stuff, because Michael was worried. He wanted to be the soloist and to go out and kill it for his record.
Yeah.
He was the real star of that show. But then to see how these legends operate, to see Steve Gadd and to go running with him every morning. And, that tour was 2.5 years, two years. And it gave me a real taste for being on the road. And a lot of you can relate to this. A lot of people say, I'd love to be on the road. But once they're done doing a big tour, what they really want to do is buy a house and get a dog and they want to cocoon out and they want to go live their life. It made me want to go on the road even more.
Yeah.
So I did the Paul Simon and then highlighted by a Simon and Garfunkel tour 6 years later, or 30 shows we did with Paul and Art. And then another Paul Simon tour. And in the middle of that Paul Simon tour, I got the, call to join Sting's band. So then I went
Because
right.
Paul and Sting were friends. Is that how?
Yeah,
that
they
happened?
lived in the same
Yeah, the same
building.
building.
Yeah. Along with Lorne Michaels and Paul bought Billy Joel's apartment, which was on the second floor, and
Right.
and Paul Sting bought Billy Joel's apartment, and so they were really good friends, and Sting made me the offer of my life. You know, he said, I've had really good success with Branford Marsalis, and I want to put you in that role, and I guarantee you I'll break the sound of your trumpet as a soloist to the whole world. And a lot of those people probably aren't going to be jazz fans, but they will be Chris Botti fans.
Wow, what a pitch!
Yeah, that was at the Dorchester. I'd gone over to London to work on this film soundtrack with John Barry, and
What film? Do you remember?
it was, well, we did a record together. John
Yeah,
Barry
I
and I did.
know. I want to talk to you about that too,
Yeah,
because
we did a record
I
together
worshiped
called
him.
"Playing by Heart," and John was doing a gig at Royal Albert Hall of all
By the
of
way,
his
John
music.
Barry, for those who don't know, John Barry was an Academy Award-winning film composer. Born Free, Out of Africa, Dances with Wolves.
Yep.
And
And then of course the Bond.
all the Bond, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Indecent Proposal.
Yeah. I mean, just haunting, beautiful. The string writing.
Somewhere in Time.
The string writing was just incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah. And we did an album together called Playing by Heart. And it was Angelina Jolie's first movie. And John got it was one of the things, interestingly enough, that made me realize that I really wanted to be an artist and not. There was a time where I was signed to CAA, and they were trying to get me to be the next Mark Isham film composer.
Yeah.
And John Barry got the call to do this music for Playing by Heart, and he'd heard about me, got a hold of me, and wanted me to be the main instrument on the album. So then I found myself in this 90-piece orchestra at Sony, and just me. I was still really young. I was like maybe 30 or something like that. And John was just an awesome guy, but they put him through hell
Really?
on that project. Yeah. Harvey Weinstein, and they kept trying to move the goalposts, and John was a salty, incredibly wonderful guy, but took no grief.
Like Jeremy Lubbock.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And so I kind of watched that, and I said, man, if they're going to put him through this thing, I'd rather just be in the front of the camera. And
So that turned you off to the idea of like doing.
yes.
Because you saw what he went through.
Yeah. So I
And
did
you
that.
thought to yourself, you probably thought to yourself, this guy who's got a shelf, he's got as many Academy Awards as I have bottles of booze up here right now.
Correct.
And they're putting him through this like he's a
Correct.
newbie.
Correct.
So you were like, that's smart of you to go, I don't want this.
Yeah, and right at that time, Mark Isham was really getting big. Those of you who don't know, Mark Isham
Yeah,
is
another
a
great
great
film composer.
film composer.
Very
But he's a great
talented.
trumpet player too.
Yeah.
And he was touring with Joni Mitchell, and he got another film offer, and so couldn't do it. And so he asked me if I wanted to go out and do sub for him in that tour. So that was great. And he told me some really interesting stories. But he goes, like, a lot of my gig is to go out and to try to nurture a film director's insecurities as they motor through this, navigate through this, stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes music is a big part of it. Sometimes music, they take up their pent up aggressions on the film composer. And sometimes Mark Isham told me that he'd go to lunch with the director, and the director would be 1 week, this is the greatest thing ever, and the next week, like, you're fired. And he'd have to take this gut punch and calm everything down. And I just thought, I kind of want to just play the trumpet.
Yeah.
And go out and make music and let the chips fall where they may under my own leadership, as it were, as a band leader. And I'm glad for all those little walking on the yellow brick road and meeting people along the way that helped me so dramatically.
Was your first solo album as an artist a result of your tour with Sting?
No.
Was
So
it before?
I'd recorded 3 solo records. It was going to be my third solo record. I mean, the way I met Sting was I played on some of his rainforest benefits, and I was in this crazy band with Tony Levin and Bill Bruford and myself and David Torn called Out of the Blue, and 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 one of his assistants knew about me, and so he recommended me to Sting. And so Sting and I played like a bossa nova version of Roxanne at the Carnegie Hall for his rainforest benefit. And I was in a yoga class like 2 months later, and I came out of the yoga class, and someone said Frank Sinatra had passed. So this was 1996.
Right.
And whether I was crazy from the endorphin rush of the yoga class, I thought, hey, I'm just going to call up Sting's assistant and see, because I always loved that song In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning.
Yeah.
So I called up and I said, Frank Sinatra's passed away, blah, blah, blah. I'd played with him. Would Sting ever want to consider playing In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning on my new record? So it's going to be my third record on Verve. Woman hangs up and calls me back the next day and said he'd love to, as long as you fly to his castle in Italy and play on his record as a
Tit for tat.
And I said, who got the better end of that deal? So that was 1996, and the record came out in 97. 1998 is when the John Barry concert was in London, and I rang up Sting's assistant and said, I'm here, I want to invite you to the show. And they said, Sting can't come because he's working on his record, but he wants to see you. Meet him at the Dorchester Hotel after the concert.
So you'd hung out with him a few times.
Yeah,
and
I'd
worked
gone
with
to his
him.
place in Italy.
And did you have an instant chemistry with him?
Yeah. We had, like a real kind of understanding of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And
I find him to be, I don't know him well, but I've spent some time with him.
Yeah.
Saw him recently. I find him to be elegant and mischievous and not what, and again, like when you're in the club sort of, or in the business, and your perception or your experience might be very different than if not, but I think he has a reputation of being somewhat aloof or salty, and I've never seen it. He's always been so warm and friendly, and
Yeah. I'm
preaching to the choir because I know that you guys were like bros, like you guys got really, really close.
I mean, we still are. I mean, I just hung out with him all the last few days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I mean,
he's okay, right? He had to cancel some shows or something from.
Yeah. No, he's good.
Yeah.
He's good. So, but we were family. I mean, I talk to him all the time and go on vacations with him and hang out. But at that Dorchester thing, when he made me that offer, it was like a lightning bolt. I was like, absolutely. And so that tour was 2.5, close to 3 years. And then we were getting ready to do the next tour, which was going to be Sacred Love. And that was 2004. And he came to me and said, I'm going to make some changes. I don't really want you in my band anymore, but I want you to be the opening act.
Wow.
To this tour. And he goes, and now this is your time.
And you're like, and who got the better end of that deal?
This is your time. You're either going to do it or you're not.
Wow. So he's like a big brother.
Absolutely. So, and I remember like that tour, like I'd walk out and there'd be 20,000 people a night, and they kind of roll in slowly,
right.
But there's enough people to kind of get the feeling. And we played a bunch of shows at the Beacon Theater in New York over that run, and someone in the audience was like, my friend Oprah Winfrey would like this guy, and then we were on Oprah's show like a couple weeks later, and it's just all these weird kind of things that lead back to my association with Sting, and then to have that close of a relationship with him to this day has been the greatest thing for me.
So I'm a little confused only in that there was the Paul Simon era, which because of their friendship, it sort of like put you on Sting's radar. But then there were some other circumstances that really got you to work with him, doing the, him having you come and do Roxanne at the Rainforest.
Yeah.
Let's just say, like in the beginning of when you start working with Paul Simon, what level of a fan are you of Sting at that point? Are you thinking, oh my God, I would love to work with Sting? Or are you like, yeah, Sting's good? Or like, are you a mega fan?
I'm a fan for sure. I didn't really know, I wasn't really a Police fan.
Okay.
I sort of got into Sting and
Blame It on the Night.
On Dream of the Blue Turtles when he started to do the jazz, thing.
Right.
And then I was way into it. was deep into all that, the British, Peter Gabriel for sure.
Yeah. Did you ever work with him?
No. God, jeez.
Well, you
Yeah.
will.
I'd love to. He's just awesome. I met him a bunch, and he's just such a, what a voice, man. What a absolute, and those records.
He put out this record last year, first record in a long time.
Yeah.
And all of us who worship at the feet of Peter Gabriel probably have a little bit of a like, oh, please don't let this be the one where it's not good.
Yeah.
And it was not only the writing and production and everything was not only still so great, but I couldn't believe how his voice is the fucking same.
It's amazing.
He's in his 70s.
His falsetto is like, it's just with that
And he doesn't tour.
That heartbreak. Yeah.
Like the whole thing of use it or lose it goes out the window because I don't think he does. I don't think he really sings that much.
Well, did you get a chance to see the Sting Peter Gabriel tour?
No, I never.
That was.
I saw a bunch of clips. But
Yeah,
I
that
never went
was
to the show.
like 8 years ago now. But
Yeah.
man, that was incredible. With the way they shared the band together on stage. And
Yeah.
Peter's band would sit there, and Tony Levin, they would watch, and and then Vinny would go off and play. Like, it was just.
Here's why I ask about what your level of fandom was, because you might be the only person I know personally who almost mirrors my experience in my way that I think is so unique, which is, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, with the exception of Elvis Presley, every single person, mostly music people, but not even necessarily just music people who, from a distance, made a real impact on me. I'm not talking about being a casual fan of a record or somebody, but people who, like, you become a real fan of them. Every single person who has impacted me that way, with the exception of Elvis Presley, I've either met, worked with, become friends with, or all.
Yeah.
And when I think about your trajectory, it's the same.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow.
And there are a lot of people who we haven't even mentioned, who I'm sure you were, like, we can throw out names of, like, here's another name on that list for me, Greg Fillinganes, who's a brilliant session keyboard player. He's not a celebrity, but I was such a fan of Greg's.
Yeah.
And I met him when I was 19, and we're still dear friends. I know you're friends with him.
Yeah.
I believe, and I've come to this mostly in the last 5 or 6 years, I really believe that the reason is because we have pulled these people into our path, or somehow we've made them pull us into theirs.
Yeah. Interesting.
I really believe it. I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
And it keeps happening to me. It continues to happen to me. I mean, I have the latest is a situation with Rod Stewart where I met him a couple times in passing over the years, but I was just the biggest Rod Stewart fan. And in the last 2 years, we've become friends. And we've, 6 months ago, I went to see him and he said, come on, you're going to get up and do Some Guys Have All the Luck with me. And I'm on stage and I'm looking at him and I'm going,
That's so awesome.
and I'm thinking, my brain at 60.
I heard he still sounds great.
He
too.
still sounds great. He was at the gig last night that Sing did.
Oh, right. At the fire.
Yeah. I had dinner with Rod a few nights ago.
Yeah.
Like you were hanging out with Sting, I was hanging out with Rod.
Yeah.
But these people who meant so much to us, who, when they say never meet your heroes, I don't have one example of a hero who I met who disappointed me.
Yeah.
They've all exceeded my expectations.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's so cool.
Same for you?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, do you ever think, like, how did I become bros with, not just that he's Sting because he's Sting and he's
All the time.
famous.
All the time.
The only reason you're a fan of Sting is because of the work that he's done that has moved you, that has meant something to you, that you've learned from,
Yeah.
and that you guys hang out.
But then I learned, all that, the way he forms a band of like flashy players behind him, always has.
Yeah.
Was Omar Hakim or, whatever, Stuart Copeland, and then lets them go.
Yes.
And
because he's confident.
Because he's confident, and he told me all the time, he goes, I want the star of the musicians behind me to shine super bright. because that only helps me, you know. And
But that's the words of a confident man.
correct, yeah, you know. But he's always been just so gracious and great at that. And if someone wants to take the reins and go to the next level, he's supportive of it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't. A lot of jazzers don't. You know, they don't really. It doesn't click or equate in them to like go up and do a duet with a pop singer. They just want to like riff out. Do you know what I mean? They don't have the spatial recognition to
Well,
how
that's
to
something
like,
about you that's very unique, is in that you can be center stage and you can be the guy,
right.
and you're an incredible accompanist. Like that's a rare.
I felt that way
balance.
like when I worked with Streisand. You know, like
Yeah.
you know, like you just gotta you gotta.
You don't want to be the guy who's trying to overshadow Barbra Streisand.
And then she's just so incredible. I mean, I just love her to bits.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible. She's done 140 shows in her entire career.
Yeah.
And
And hates every one of them.
I've been so lucky to be on 40 of them.
Wow.
You know, like a third of her career, I've been on that stage with her. You know, like or her, you know, or touring career.
And she hates the process. She hates touring.
I know. I got one good Streisand.
Come on, this is what this the show's called, Stories to Tell.
Yeah, I hope she doesn't get mad at me for saying
She
this,
won't.
but
Because she knows we're both friends of hers.
she asked me. So I played at David Foster's wedding to Yolanda, going back to like 2011, and she was in the audience, and I thought it was like I was being punked, and she came up and said, you know, we ought to do something together. I'm like what the heck is okay? A couple of years later, I get a call and said, you know, she doesn't use an opening act. She puts someone she digs in the middle of her set, and she
changes clothes.
does some duets,
Yeah.
and then she takes off and changes clothes, and then I would play a couple of my own songs, and then she comes back. Okay. And so when we did that tour, I would just take my violinist and my tour manager and myself. So it would just be, and we would travel completely independent of the Streisand huge, you know, epic tour planes and all that stuff. And we were playing in Montreal, and she was always so lovely. And she was like, so Chris, are you going to fly to Quebec? I mean, to, where are we playing? Oh God, like Rochester? I can't remember where we were playing, but it was like a 4-hour ride.
Right.
You know? And I said, no, Barbara, I have a beautiful tour bus. And I said, you know, you're always welcome to go with us on the tour bus. And she goes, I've never been on a tour bus. So,
Of course not.
So let's say you're Streisand, you're saying this to me.
Yeah.
And I see Marty, who's her tour manager, over the shoulder
Her
like
manager.
this. Tour manager.
Oh, the tour manager.
Yeah.
Not the
Not
no.
Marty
Ehrlichman.
Ehrlichman,
Right.
but Marty Hom, who's a
Okay.
tour manager.
Yeah.
So he's
Going like this?
He's like, yes, totally. And she goes, I would love to come on the tour bus. And I see him, and I'm like, okay, well, what time do we leave? And then she said, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. We're going to leave at 10 o'clock. She goes, okay. And I'm like, oh God, what did I do? So I come down at 10 o'clock, and Marty's standing out on the pacing on the pavement, and he goes, I told you. And I said, what did I do? I mean, I hope I didn't upset you or something. And I get on the tour bus, and there's her security guard and her assistant with the dog,
Yep.
and the whole tour bus is covered in roses.
Yep.
And she ordered so much Chinese food.
Yep.
And while we drove that 4 hours, she served us all Chinese food.
Yep.
Like a doting, incredible
Mom. Yeah.
person, icon. And, you know, this was 2012 and 2013 or 14, I can't remember. And, you know, phones weren't like, you know, people weren't on social media
Nobody
all the
would
time.
believe it.
You could not, we were just going like, this is just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but her talent, her level of the way she switches up everything's not, and the way she lays back in the time and just floats those notes out.
And in the studio, her intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, oh God.
She remembers what she did. If she sings 9 takes of a song,
Yeah.
she'll remember a little thing she did, and she'll remember that it was in take 4. And I've had the honor of producing her a couple times. And I'll see people in the room where the engineer kind of like do a little like, yeah, right, so I'm sure it's take, and I'll look at it and I'll go, it's going to be take 4. And she never fails.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-blowing. Can we trade?
Yeah.
So I met Barbara when I was really young, 20, something like that. And so I've been,
But does this have to do with the #1 record?
No, that's a good story
Oh,
too, but you know that story.
Yeah.
No, this is one you don't know. And I worked with her a few times, but never really knew her. And then I don't remember exactly what prompted it. Maybe like 15 years ago, something occurred where we ended up having dinner together, and we just were like, oh, we like hanging out together. So we became friendly, and then we really haven't worked together since then.
Yeah.
But we've become friends, and I'm friends with Jim, and then I got divorced. She knew my ex-wife, and then a couple of years later, I met Daisy and started dating Daisy, and we finally had a dinner where she met Daisy, and she highly approved, and she was very excited for me to find new love, and then she kind of fell in love with Daisy as well. So we started socializing pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And one night, Daisy had a friend visiting, and this girl was dating a new guy from Argentina who was visiting, and so we were going to take them out to dinner, and we were going to meet the new boyfriend of Daisy's friend. So a few nights before, Daisy says, should we invite another couple, kind of maybe just, what about Barbara and Jim? And I was like, you know, Barbara doesn't really go out that much. Like, she goes, you can ask. And I said, I'll ask, but I doubt this. So I text Barbara, hey, Friday night we're going to dinner with Daisy's friend and this guy. You and Jim want to come? She texts me right back. Jim's away doing a movie, but I'd like to come. Can you pick me up? I said, sure. I said, Barbara's coming. So the 5 of us are going to go to dinner. And it was at what's now Lucky's in Malibu, but it was Mr. Chow. And that was a place. If Barbara was going to go out to dinner in Malibu, she would go to Mr. Chow because she loved the food.
Right.
So we go to pick her up. I'm driving. Daisy's next to me. Barbara's in the back seat. We're driving down PCH to the restaurant. And Barbara says, so who are these people we're going to have dinner with? And Daisy says, oh, it's my dear friend and this guy that she's just dating. And now, prior to this, I have to point this out, maybe 3 or 4 months before this, Barbara had invited us to the launch. She did a little tour, and she did, those friends and family shows where she does a full dress rehearsal.
Right.
At the Staples Center.
Wow.
She invited us, put us in the front row. She said, bring anybody you want. So we brought this girl, this friend of Daisy's, who's a massive Barbara fan. So she was at this concert. This is a few months before this dinner. Now she's going to have dinner with Barbra Streisand. So Daisy deliberately didn't mention that Barbra Streisand was coming, because in case Barbara canceled at the last minute or something. So Daisy said, well, it's my friend. She was actually at your friends and family concert months ago, and she's such a fan. And she doesn't know you're coming because I did. And Barbara goes, she doesn't know they don't know I'm coming? They don't know I'm coming? Daisy goes, no. She goes, I swear to God, this is all happening as we're driving. Barbara goes, ooh, here's what we're gonna do. When we get to the restaurant, you park and go inside, and I'll wait outside. And then at a certain point, I'll count to like 30, and then I'll come in and I'll pretend like I don't know where I'm sitting. And then you'll say, oh, you're with, she like is directing this whole.
That's so awesome.
And as I'm driving, as she's describing this, I'm looking in the rearview mirror like, are you fucking kidding me? So she does this whole act to entertain these people she's never met.
That is so awesome.
And I could go on and on. There's a lot of more details of the story. We end up sitting, the girl freaks out. We end up having dinner for 2 hours. And as we're wrapping it up, Barbara says, why don't you guys they've never been to the house. Daisy, Richard, are you busy? Like, maybe I'll show her around the house. And we all end up going to Barbara's house. And she gives these people a tour of her home.
That is
because she's just, that's who she is.
yeah.
It's kind of unreal. And people don't generally perceive her that way or know that.
I mean, her fame is. I mean, maybe on a level of Sinatra.
Yeah.
And it's so refreshing to hear that story of someone that wasn't completely freaked out to like wait in the car park and come rolling in. And,
I was worried. I was like, I didn't want to leave her alone outside.
Yeah, no, I know. It's like, I mean, she's just like next level.
But the thing you said about her serving you guys on the bus and decking out the bus and everything, that's my experience with her too a lot, which is that she's very motherly and nurturing and thoughtful. And I've even in the early days of knowing her, I would come over to her house to maybe work with her on something or have to go through an arrangement, and she would have remembered what I asked to drink. Like one time I went over to her house and we were working on a movie she did called Mirror Has Two Faces, where I wrote and sang a song in it. And she directed the film. And I went over to go through something with her. And I asked for, they were sending out for beverages or something. And I said, well, look, if it's not too much trouble, I love this iced tea thing. 3 weeks later, I come back. She's got it there waiting for me. She remembered what I asked.
It's amazing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, anyway, we went on a little Barbra love fest tangent. But so you then become, what do you think was the real exploding, what was the moment that separated you from where you were to where you are?
Probably playing on Oprah, and then she cried after I got through. Whether it was show business or not, I don't know, but I'm sure grateful she did. And that,
because it was that bad.
yeah, totally. And it was at the point of her career, and I know you've had Kenny on several times. I mean, on the show here, and he's been on her show several times. When Oprah was reaching so many millions of people.
Oh no! At that time, she could make her break.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the snowball effect of what launched it, and then opening up for a few different artists, for Sting for that 1.5 tour, for Josh Groban on like a 4-month tour, and then subsequently duet tour, one with Earth, Wind and Fire and one with Diana Krall, where we split up the show. That enabled me to go into markets like Milwaukee or whatever and sell a ticket. Especially that stint with Sting going right into Josh Groban, which was a completely different kind of audience. And then all of a sudden they're seeing my band opening for Josh, and they're like, I want to go see that guy, Right. And then that started to launch out then to get the PBS specials that I've done, Live in Boston, all that sort of stuff. And at the time in the American pop culture stuff where there was long form video, PBS, that really could break someone. Yeah. And that I was a beneficiary of that platform, I guess you could say. And then from that, I just rolled out and just relentlessly toured, on the backs of that, and building and building and building and building and building until now we can tour kind of everywhere. And
you're leaving out, as I knew you would, and I understand, you're leaving out the real reason, which I know you enough that you just, it's not in you to, but I'll tell you what the real reason is. Your uniqueness. There's something about you, and it's definitely your playing, of course. I remember somebody, before, like when I was first hearing about you, somebody said, it's like Chet Baker came back, and then I was like, yeah, but, and also, and beyond that, there's for you to have the ability to be unique within your instrument, but then to have the cool, you have this cool factor, and you have a charisma about you. And I know I'm like, I get it, but it's important that we point out why you have become a name that people know, in a way that no other trumpet player in a long, long time has that sort of name value and can sell tickets
Right.
but it's really just you're an extraordinary musician, but it's your tone, it's all of the things that make up a real career.
Right.
And
Well, thank you.
I'm here to because you're gonna be not self-deprecating, but you're gonna be humble, and I'm here to tell you that thing, all those things that you had, starting with your musicianship for sure and your talent, but the other things, your charisma as a person, that's what propelled you. That's why people wanted to hang out with you. That's why Sting was like, he's my bro.
Yeah.
That's why, and these people want you to be part of that and open for us. And Barbra wants to ride on your bus.
Yeah.
Part of the reason you have the career you have is over and above your gift as a musician.
Right. Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Dude, I just, this is so fun for me. I want to just, we could geek out and nerd out about stories about people all day long.
And then the other thing we share is our, the big person in my life for many years, Bobby Coli.
Yeah.
And I know he was a big person in your life for many years.
Huge.
And what he kind of, his belief in me was paramount. Like him getting me my deal on Sony and and driving the nail with relentless energy. And I know all about that.
Do I ever.
And his, unwavering kind of like going for it.
When he
musically,
believes in something. By the way,
swinging
Bobby Coli is very well known also in the music industry, but he was the drummer in Blood, Sweat, and Tears, founding member of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and then became a guy who found talent and would get and sign people to record deals here and there. Signed Robbie Neville back in the 80s.
Had a lot to do with Harry Connick.
Harry Connick Jr. for sure. In 1986, I became friendly with him, and he heard the music that I was writing and recording that every label in the world had rejected multiple times over years, and was like, no, they don't get it. I'm going to make, and he became my champion the way he did for you.
Yeah.
So we have Bobby in common. And, And Bobby produced some of your records too, which were like...
And managed me. And we had 23 incredible years.
Yeah.
And I think in hindsight that the blur of being your manager and your producer kind of...
Sure.
It took its toll on us, but I'm forever eternally grateful for, because he was the guy that championed all that. And I guess Don Einer, who was the head of Columbia Records at the time, Bobby came to him and he goes, Don Einer goes, okay, look, I'm going to give you guys one more shot at doing a record. And if it's just going to sell a few 100,000, he goes, I'm not really into it.
Yeah.
And Bobby goes, tell Chris he doesn't have to do anything that's beholden to radio. And at the time, smooth jazz radio was kind of the thing that pigeonholed artists. And he goes, we'll make a beautiful string record. That was When I Fall in Love. And we'll come back and play it for you and we'll have a glass of wine. And Don Einer said, okay, only one request. I want you to cover Time to Say Goodbye, the Bocelli classic.
Sarah Brightman.
And Jeremy Lubbock did the arrangement. And that sort of spurred me onto this other angle of like playing, bel canto, lyrical trumpet style over the top of what is sort of crossover classical. And then subsequently doing lots of stuff with Bocelli and Josh Groban, etc. So that...
the last album you did was with David Foster, right?
Yeah.
Is Danny Boy the opening track?
Yeah.
Fucking killed me, man.
Oh,
it
thank
fucking
you.
killed me.
Thank you.
I was really looking forward to hearing it, and I love the album, but it was like, he played Danny Boy, and I was a mess because it was so right.
Yeah, and David's just got, he's just got that it factor. And having him produce, a record with jazz musicians is funny, like the way that the other musicians would play around him.
Yeah.
Different than they play around their jazz counterparts.
Sure.
And he would just make a couple of phrases like, let's move the voicings into this, into this. But he's the one that played that opening, the Danny Boy, that regal kind of.
Yeah.
And I just love him so much. He's just
I love him too, even though he told me I shouldn't sing. when I was fucking 19 years old. I never
he
let
really?
him forget it. Yeah, it's
Oh my
it's been our little thing where, yeah, I really worshipped him and was working with him, and I was kind of studying with him, and he would have me sing background vocals, and we wrote together a little bit when I was young, really young. And he knew that I wanted to be an artist. And one day, we'd been hanging out for like a year or two, and he knew that I really admired him and respected him. And one day he said, "You just don't have it. You're not an artist."
Damn.
He's like, you should just be like me. You should just write and produce. You don't. And I was 19, and it was like having your dad tell you you're ugly. It killed me.
And what did he ever come back and after he became a big superstar?
In true David fashion, he now takes credit for my success because that's what fueled you to.
That's awesome.
No, we've had some really funny. He's told that story like on television and stuff like that. Hey, look, I'm the guy that told Richard Marx he shouldn't sing. You know.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a big brother, little brother, like this kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But despite that, my respect for him is immeasurable.
Yeah, he's just awesome. We're doing a duet tour this summer. We're gonna do like 15 or 20 cities, and
Nice.
so looking forward to that. He's just awesome.
So what's next after? Are you going to do another album this year or next year?
I
Because
think
you're
we'll go in this.
you're constantly touring.
Yeah, I think I'll try to go in August and just start the process of feeling out kind of what I want to do next.
Is there a reason why you haven't written more?
Maybe when I did that When I Fall in Love record, I realized, there's a lot of great writers, and I really want to work on the sound of my trumpet and interpreting stuff rather than putting my pen to paper and doing something new. Like you can capture someone's emotion if it's a song they know, but it resonates with a different kind of interpretation,
Yeah.
or the way that the trumpet leans up against their emotions. And I think you can do that with melodies that sounds familiar to them, and spend your time working on the shine of the instrument, to get the elasticity and the articulation, or the power out of the instrument, or the tenderness, and that all comes with multiple hours a day of practicing
for
and
sure.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of when you decided when you were kind of studying with John Barry and you were thinking, maybe I'm going to be a film composer, and you're like, you read the signs and you go, yeah, that's not it for me.
Yeah. And I spend most of my time thinking about, how to craft a show, and take that show out and make it different than maybe someone could go see whether it's a jazz act or a popular act or something like that, and to try to blend all these classical musicians on stage with jazz musicians and popular singers.
Dude, you made me get up with you once, 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, Chris, no. And you were like, no. My guys know. Just come up, just sit at the piano and sing. And I was like, and I was surrounded by, we did a version of Right Here Waiting that was so unlike anything I'd ever done before.
That's so cool.
It was a blast for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been, I've been really lucky to be able to keep, I don't have a band. I'm kind of a curator Rubik's Cube of an all-star band.
Right.
And these people that come through my band, Caroline Campbell or Lee Pearson or, Billy Childs over the years and all that, and they have families and they burn out. I tour too much.
Yeah.
So they kind of navigate through and then come back and navigate through. And then I'm always, my ear to the ground on who the next person is to be in my band, or to take that space for that time.
Yeah.
That's what I spend a lot of time doing and trying to figure out, what my next step is. The record business, obviously, we know has changed quite considerably. And so this is my first record on Blue Note, Volume 1 with David Foster. And then hopefully I'll do Volume 2 this year and Volume 3 in a couple of years. And yeah.
What's your level of happiness generally right now, 2025?
I'm super excited about the fact that I'm still playing well and getting better, you know, learning more. I've gotten this, I've told you, I've gotten this crazy addiction to race car driving.
Yeah.
That's only been in 2 years. That's sort of radically changed my off touring schedule or what I do.
It doesn't surprise me that you would pick something like that because there is a level of dopamine rush that we get from being on stage, right?
Absolutely.
So like when you're off, what else are you gonna do?
And also you can't be off and be the typical jazz musician up late having a good time,
Right.
and then be on the track and be aware of, you know,
Right.
you have to kind of, and there's a lot of similarities into playing the trumpet and driving at in other words,
Precision.
precision muscle memory,
Yeah.
and just the way you learn the language of playing bebop or jazz.
Yeah.
It's the same as the lines on the track. And then when the band's going crazy, you have to like remain calm, not only on the track, but on the bandstand
Right.
as well. There's a lot of really interesting things that I've learned in that thing. Now, I'm not interested in going out and racing against, like entering a race and Steve McQueening this thing. But I love the
You're competing with
bit-
yourself
yes,
with it, right?
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love
Like
and
you
I
are as a musician.
Yeah, and I love the drama of the sound and
Yeah.
it's just
I can't wait to see what you pulled up in because I heard it.
It's thrilling. Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
buddy.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
you come back
What an honor.
again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime. What an honor. Thank you.
Richard.
Almost forgot. So one of the things I do, I started from the get-go, was I give a piece of vinyl to my guest.
Okay. Great.
In your case, I was perplexed, and it comes from I've collected records forever. So I picked these two for you. You probably have them. But you have one of them, probably. You probably have this, right?
No, I don't.
Really?
No.
And it's so weird because 5 minutes into the conversation, you mentioned Bill Evans.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is further
That's
conversation with
awesome.
myself, Bill Evans. These are all
So-
original vinyls that I've had.
wow.
That was my father's record, actually.
Santa Claus is coming. That's awesome.
And then, do you know who the Hi-Lows were?
No.
So the Hi-Lows were this 4-guy vocal group, kind of jazz-based, and they were based out of Chicago. And so some of them, when I was a little kid, I remember hearing, oh yeah, he's with the Hi-Lows. They were the jingle singers
Oh wow.
part-time.
Right.
So they worked for my dad, who
Yeah.
was a jingle producer. But they made a series of albums, and their vocal harmonies were so amazing. The arrangements were done by this guy, Gene Perling, who's on here. So I thought you'd enjoy this
Thank
too.
you. That's so nice of you. Wow.
Do you
that's-
are you a vinyl guy? Do you even have
I don't have a way, but I will.
You're never gonna fucking listen to this.
But I
This
have.
was
I
such
have
a waste
couple
of time.
No, I have a couple of my friends that have big time.
so okay,
I'll
so
take it over.
go over,
Listen to- yeah.
take those over to your friend and say,
It's a completely different experience, and I haven't listened to vinyl in many years. But it's
Oh,
like
man,
it's
so
just
fun.
you get the warmth and the sound and the space
and the crackle. And,
Yeah.
and also just the experience of
Undoing it. Yeah.
And
And not
going-
jumping around, not allowing your brain to like.
that for sure.
You know, like that's a dedication. Okay, I'm gonna start at the beginning.
But also nerds like us to go, wait, who's playing piano in this?
Yeah.
Wait, who did the string chart of this?
Yeah.
You know, the credits and
Yeah.
anyway, my gift
Thank
to
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Awesome. What a treat.
Awesome. Let's go to dinner.
Let's go to dinner.